and welcome to the BTC podcast, where it's all about creativity, innovation, and meaningful conversations. Welcome to it, folks. A special thank you to Cell City plugging me on their best devices. You can also get it yourself. Hey, Oscar Salala ko morago. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the BTC podcast. As usual, it is exciting, electrifying, and it's going to be so insightful as well. My name is Katie Mulusiwa. You might also know me as Katie, aka Lizoti, aka Zo, your host. And I hope that you are doing well and you're keeping warm in this winter season. So today's episode is talking to a very important guest. We talked to a man who co-founded and is also a CEO of one of Africa's largest award-winning cryptocurrency entities. And he'll tell us a little bit more about that and what he does. But do help me welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Chris Maurice is here. Hi, Chris. Let me just give you an applause there. It goes like, it just has a...
Oh, look, I'm not as important as you, but, I'm doing my best.
No, you are very important. And I did my own research on you. I'm like, oh, so this guy's has money also. And, us African women and money, that's a thing that we really do like. So, you had to just check. Also, you're 27 years old.
Yes.
How did you even come up with something this great and you're only 27 now?
Oh, I started it in college. So I was, 19 when we started. So I'll make a long story short, right? So I got into Bitcoin really early. So I got in 2013. So Bitcoin was $150 at the time, and Thrift Shop by Macklemore was #1 on the chart. So it was a pretty crazy year.
Yeah.
My co-founder is a big nerd, right? He's the guy that would walk around parties way before it was cool, talking about Bitcoin. And so he got me involved in the space real early. And then by 2015, I was fully down the rabbit hole. And, we started trying some things and we wanted to do some different things, tried some things in the States. And eventually we were going to put a gift card in Walmart and places like that where you'd be able to walk in, buy it, redeem it for Bitcoin. And we're building this out. And one day I meet this Nigerian guy at a Wells Fargo who's sending $200 to his family. And the bank charged him $90 to send $200 to his mom. And I thought, well, that seems absurd, right? So I talked to the guy, like, hey, have you heard of Bitcoin? It's, it's free, it's instant, it's fun, all this great stuff. And I went home and I just started thinking, what's this guy's mom going to do with $200 of Bitcoin, right? Like, you can't buy food with that. You can't pay. I feel like I need to clarify. Normally, when I meet strangers, I don't spend the rest of the day at my house thinking about their mom. But this was sort of an exception. And so I just, I wanted to learn more, right? I wanted to kind of understand. And so, eventually I'm doing all this research and I realize if I want to understand the problem and the country and the continent more broadly, I need to speak to somebody from there. And so I put out an ad online that said, looking to speak to Nigerian men. Which, in hindsight,
that doesn't sound
probably been
very
worded a bit better.
Yeah, that's just okay, looking for Nigerian men, Chris.
Could have worded it a lot better in hindsight. But so I ended up meeting this guy. And within about a month and a half of meeting this Nigerian guy on the internet, booked the first international flight of my life. Had to go get a passport. Didn't even have a passport. And I landed in Lagos on a 6-day-old passport, no visa, no shots, and a one-way ticket that I spent all of my money on, living in a hotel room with one bed and 4 dudes. Whoa. So it's so it was a real trial by fire. That's how
Yeah.
You got to rise from the bottom, baby.
Yeah. And how old were you then?
I was maybe 20.
20 at the time.
Yeah.
So the establishment of Yellow Card, because that's what you do. You are a co-founder of Yellow Card. For somebody who doesn't actually understand that business and what it stands for and what it's about, how would you define it to a 5-year-old?
Yeah, so, basically what we do is we make it really easy for people and businesses to be able to use stablecoins to make international payments, to manage treasury for businesses, right? And just do anything that is otherwise difficult for them to do through the banking system, right? Banks have a lot of restrictions. There's a lot of limits on things like foreign exchange and all of that. And so, stable coins, dollar peg stable coins, provide people and especially businesses with a way of actually being able to, keep their business flowing, keep imports coming in, keep money moving around the world, while without the restrictions of the modern banking system.
So in hindsight, when you think about it now, would you say that you've always wanted to do that, like as a kid?
No.
What did you want to do as a kid? Because
Not sell Bitcoin in Nigeria. That was not growing up. That was not exactly.
because you're young, someone would think, but like, why would you do that? Why would you get into something like that?
Yeah. I mean, look, when we started, I don't think I knew where Nigeria was on a map, right? I mean, they don't teach you nearly as much about Africa as you might think they do in the Louisiana education system. So
Yeah, apparently so, yes. Because we always hear a lot of things, people thinking Botswana is in South Africa. And it's like, no, it's Southern Africa. It's a neighbor of South Africa,
Yeah, no, I mean, no, growing up, man, I don't know. I always knew I wanted to do my own thing, right? And so I mean, from fifth grade, which that's like 8-9 years old, I was selling Pokemon cards on the internet, right? I mean, so I was always like doing, like, finding a way to just do business, right? Make sales, make stuff happen. So I sort of always knew that I wanted to do my own thing. Yeah, and then I went to college, started as a math major.
Okay.
That was terrible. Wouldn't recommend it.
Really?
Yeah,
You're not into that, or what happened?
My sister, at a certain point, there's no more numbers.
Ooh.
Yeah, it gets wild.
What happened? Tell us more.
I don't know either.
Because we don't know what that is.
No idea. No, I saw that. I had a math test. There were no numbers on it. I was like, no, I'm switching to finance.
Then did you manage to switch to finance though?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And then please do continue. What happened after?
That's really about it. That's about
Yeah.
the point in my life where I started looking for Nigerian men on the internet. So.
And then now let's talk about the establishment of Yellow Card. Also, wait, before we do talk about that, were your parents okay with you as a 8-year-old, 9-year-old selling Pokemon on the internet?
Look, I mean, I'm sure they I'm sure they were fine, right? Yeah.
Because I'm wondering what sort of conversations that you're having with them now and how that has evolved over years, like in especially supporting where you are right now and how you're able to get this far in your life.
Yeah. I think now that the company is doing well, I think it's much easier to have those conversations. Because originally when I'm running around living in like $10 a night hostels with roaches and Ethiopia and everything, right? Those were not easy conversations.
Yeah, because I'm wondering how you
it's-
were able to talk to them and say, I want to go, I want to switch up, I want to go to Africa.
Oh yeah, I just didn't tell them most of the stuff. Now in hindsight, I've told them. Oh yeah, that's no. See, the thing is that if I tell them, then they're gonna worry. So I just tell them afterwards, and then they,
And then you ended up in ICU.
well, it happens.
Yeah. So
Who amongst us hasn't been in the ICU a few times?
I haven't. We haven't. Like over here, sir, you're the only one. But that's something I think maybe we should also maybe highlight how that maybe changed your outlook on life or perception on life, maybe like being in the hospital.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I was in there for a long time. I was really sick. I mean, I couldn't stand, I couldn't walk, I could barely talk. I was sleeping all day. There was nothing else to do. And I kept waiting for that epiphany that people talk about, when they're sick and they're in the hospital and they're dying and they have this, come to Jesus moment and they figure their life out. And no.
What did you have? What moments did you have?
No, the only thing I was thinking about is like, man, I got like 9 days of emails piling up now.
So you
I
were
like
thinking
what I
about
do. I like
work.
what I do. So it's like, I got to get back to this.
Wow. And then in terms of the growth of Yellow Card, the establishment, the company, and now you guys being an award-winning cryptocurrency, what is it, agent or company? How do you define it then?
Yeah, I mean, we call ourselves a stable coin on and off ramp, right? But
Stablecoin on and
crypto
off
exchange, right? It's all sort of the same thing. Yeah.
And then for somebody who doesn't know what cryptocurrency is, because I think we're in Botswana and we're probably, I don't know how many years behind, or just haven't really learned that part of crypto, or been introduced to it, quote unquote. How do you define cryptocurrency to a layman, 5-year-old, you know?
Yeah, well, number one, you'd be shocked. This is one of our best countries. So
Oh,
there are
yeah?
a lot of people here.
Yeah.
Yeah. People are into it.
Okay.
I think in terms of defining crypto, what I would say is, look, Bots has the Pula, right?
Mm-hmm.
South Africa has the Rand, the
Mm-hmm.
U.S. has the dollar, Japan has the yen, the internet has Bitcoin
Mm-hmm.
and cryptocurrency more broadly, right? It's look, I mean, we're at a point in the world now where the internet is more powerful than, I mean, pretty much most countries, right?
Fair. Yeah.
And it's it has a mind of its own,
Mm-hmm.
right? The internet has done such wild things in the 30 years that it's been around. And so it's, the way that I see it is it's about time that it has a native currency that, enables people to be able to transact online seamlessly, right?
Ah.
Borders don't matter on the internet.
So that is cryptocurrency.
Exactly. It's
Okay.
money for the internet, right?
Okay.
I think the best analogy to tie it to something that everybody's familiar with is crypto does for international payments and for sending money what WhatsApp did for international communication.
Love it. Oh, so it's just one whole world, and then you can just send your money
Exactly.
easily like that. Are there any
Exactly.
charges though?
There's very, very small, right? So you have to pay like network fees because there's the network, which is distributed, maintained by miners all around the world. But yeah, it's minimal compared to a wired fee or anything like that from a bank.
Fair. And then in terms of security, how do you guys ensure that there's secure transactions and my information also doesn't get leaked out or anything? Because the internet, as much as it's for everybody, it could also be misused.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so from like the company perspective, we do all the cybersecurity, everything necessary from like a cybersecurity standpoint, right? So like SOC 2 compliance and all the other certifications. I think there is a big misconception though because people hear about companies having issues in different parts of the world with Bitcoin and crypto and everything. Bitcoin has never been hacked, right? Bitcoin cannot conceivably be hacked because it's a distributed system. And so the best way to think about that is every time that you do a transaction, you have what are called miners, right? All around the world, these computers all around the world that are going back in time and saying, okay, if I sent you 1 Bitcoin, where did I get that Bitcoin from, right? Oh, I got it from him, and then he got it from him, and so they're going back. They're making sure that that's a legitimate, coin that I have, right?
Yes.
They're updating the ledger to move it to your wallet, and that's what they're getting rewarded for, right?
Okay.
But in the process of that, because it's being done by computers all around the world, if I go into my wallet and I say, now I have 10 million Bitcoin, and then I try to make a transaction to you, it's going to be checked by all these other computers around the world, and they're going to say, I have no record of this, and they're going to kick me out.
What makes Yellow Card different from all the other companies that maybe are into fintech or do what you guys do?
Yeah, aside from being better.
Of course, you are the best.
No, look, I mean, I think what we really bring to the table is that we use stable coins. We use this new age technology to really solve these problems, right? I think that look, a lot of fintech, and this is on the continent, but also in other parts of the world, right? Like a lot of fintech is what I like to say, like putting lipstick on a pig, right? Like it's you put a smooth user interface out there, and you solve somebody's problem, but you're still using the banking rails. You're still using the archaic system, and so you haven't actually fixed anything. You just made it a little bit easier for maybe that person or those people to make their transactions. With stable coins and with this new technology, it actually fixes the core problem. It's a better way of being able to move money around the world.
Okay.
And so the way that we see it is we're actually going after the core problem and helping businesses that face this problem, right, and that have these issues, helping them to better serve their customers and to be more successful. But yeah, I mean, we see ourselves as attacking really that core problem.
Okay. And how do you see the relationship between traditional financial institutions and the fintech startups?
Yeah, I think I think that the more that traditional financial institutions, banks, companies like that get involved with fintech startups, the better. I think,
Collaboration?
yeah, 100%, right. I don't think look, is it competitive long term? Potentially, right? But there's so much more room for collaboration than there is competition,
Okay.
right? And this is broadly across the continent, right? Like like the continent is just growing so quickly. There's so much opportunity that there's no need to be eating anybody else's lunch, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody should be working together to keep the pie growing. And so I think like one of the most important things that banks can do is actually work with fintech startups, right? Fintech startups are look, I mean, most of these banks have been around for, ages,
Yeah,
right?
many
Since
years.
before the internet.
Yep.
Most of them have terrible like user experience, right? It's just, it's not, I mean, most people don't like their bank, right? Right? And that's why fintech exists. And so the more that the more that banks work to acquire and integrate fintech into their existing systems, the better for everybody, right? Because the reality is the banks are the ones with the money, the banks are the ones with the customers. And so, look, it's, people talk about like, oh, well, is this going to compete with banks and everything? It's like, man, JP Morgan's not going anywhere, right? Like, I don't care what we do, right?
Yeah.
JP Morgan's not going away. And so, I think, again, it's, there's a great opportunity there for collaboration.
And still on the topic of opportunity, what have you maybe observed or seen since you've been in Botswana? And you said earlier on that you've been here for like the past 6 years now. You always visit Botswana. What are some of the untapped opportunities that you see with regards to fintech in our country?
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of opportunity for fintech here, right? I think that overall, this is one of the markets that just hasn't seen as much attention from venture capital, from other external players in the space, and it shows, right? And so it's I mean it's just still there's still so many things to solve from like a fintech perspective, right? Making it easier for even just local payments, right? Things like that. And so yeah, I think in bots specifically, the other advantage that you have is that you have forward-looking regulators that actually do their best to understand the space. And when you have that, I think what you're going to see is the companies, the job creation, the growth over time is gonna start flowing in, right? Because the regulators and the various forces in the government are creating an environment here that's actually friendly for business, right, and friendly for innovation, which I think is extremely important.
And in terms of the future of fintech, how do you see it? Or what do you see?
Ooh, I think in terms of the future of fintech in Africa, I think what we're going to be looking at soon is consolidation. I think that again, look, Botswana and their other countries are good examples of places where it's not saturated. But if you look at South Africa, if you look at like Kenya, Nigeria, any of the bigger economies on the continent, the fintech space very, very saturated at this point, right? I mean, there are, look, just to use Nigeria as an example, I mean, there are like 10 million companies all doing the same thing, right? Helping you like make a payment or move money or anything like that. And so, all of that is great. But the reality is that nobody wants 10 million apps on their phone. And so,
That's true.
eventually all of this stuff has to consolidate. And I think that in like markets like the U.S., for example, we've already seen this, right? When you look at like things like like fintech payments, right? You have Cash App and Venmo, and that's it, right? Like there's nothing else, and those guys are behemoths, right? $40+ billion companies each. And so I think that's what's going to be next in Africa. Really, is I think that there are a couple of players and a couple of like giants on the continent Yeah, I personally think we're one of them, but I'm biased. And I think that you're going to need to start to see either companies failing, or you're going to need to see like acquisitions and roll ups and that kind of thing, right? I think you just need more consolidation.
And if somebody wants to venture into fintech, like what you've done, what you've did, what would you say to them?
I'd say do it in Botswana.
Do it right here.
Yeah. The thing is like again, like I said, in some of like the larger economies on the continent, it's just oversaturated. So there's no point in throwing your hat into the ring when there's already 500 other people in there boxing it out, right? And so I think if you're not solving an underlying issue, if you're building on top of other people's technology, it's going to be really hard to compete in those markets, right? Because there's just already so much going on. And so I think if you want to do fintech right now on the continent, you need to look at countries like Botswana. You need to look at countries like, even like Zambia next door, right? And Malawi and just, really the whole SADC region outside of South Africa, right? There's still so much to solve. All these South African companies are very inward looking, right? They're only really solving South African problems. They're not focused on bots. They're not focused on any other parts of the, parts of the region. And so I think if you're looking to do fintech right now, I would say look to some of the markets that people don't necessarily think about from like, a foreign perspective, right? And Botswana is definitely one of them.
Okay. Should I be, what sort of courses should I be studying then? You talked about math, then you talked about finance. So if I'm a young, if I'm a young person right now and I'm trying to venture into it and I have to go to school first, what sort of subjects or courses should I be maybe looking into?
I don't know. I have a lot of opinions on school. So here's the thing is like, I think the best advice that I ever got in my life, I was maybe 19, 20 when I got this advice, is after your first year of college, you've learned everything that you need to know in this world to be successful. There is nothing more that you're going to teach, that somebody's going to teach you that's just going to completely enlighten you and change your life at that point. You know how to read, you know how to write, you've been able to do it at, a university level. And so you're, you're smarter than the average bear, so to speak, right? And so at that point, everything becomes about who you know, as opposed to what you know. And so I think, when you think about like trying to get into fintech, trying to get into the space, right? Obviously, look, again, you should study finance, right? You should make sure that you have a grip on basic financial concepts, right? On how, banking works, on things like that. But there's no crash course on how to run a company, right? It's like, and there's just, I promise you could never write a book on it, because the moment you write it, it would be outdated.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I think when you think about like, what should you be studying? It's not about like studying and like, going to school to learn this stuff. It's about talking to people that are in the space, right? You're going to learn so much more from the people that you meet that have had these experiences, that have done it, right? That know what it's actually like to run a company and all of that. They'll be able to teach you a lot more than a textbook ever will. So yeah, I know some people really value education. So I know that that's a hot take, but I'm not saying education's bad. I'm just saying that you're going to learn a lot more from other people's experiences, talking to people, meeting people, networking, and it'll also bring you a lot further in life.
Absolutely. And what's next now for Yellow Card? What are you guys cooking? What are you guys working on? Are you guys going to set up here?
Oh, we've been here.
Oh, you've been here?
This was our second country after Nigeria.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what's the future like then for you guys here?
Oh, we're just trying to grow, baby.
There's
not much left to do.
Take it to the top.
We're big now, right? I mean, so it's it's no longer about hype or anything like that, right? People want to see a return. People want to see, numbers going up and to the right. So that's the only focus at this point. Is just how do we grow? How do we help more businesses across the continent make those international payments? How do we help them manage treasury? How do we help them set up, right? And so I think, one of the big things that we're focused on now is, look, we have deals with Block, Square, Cash App, those guys. We have deals with Coinbase, with so many of these big American companies, helping bring them into the continent. And so I think one of the big things that we're focused on right now is obviously in the US, but then also outside in just every other part of the world. How do we help more companies do business on the continent, hire on the continent, bring money, jobs, all of that to the continent, and see that Africa is a phenomenal place to do business, right? If you're a big company anywhere in the world and you don't have an Africa plan, you're 10 years behind already.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really the big thing that we're focused on now, is how do we help more of these big companies, these tech giants, all of that, actually do business on the continent in a safe and secure way.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris Maurice, for joining us today in the Green Studio. It has been great hanging out with you, and we wish you the very best with Yellow Card as well, and your future endeavors as you are out here in the Gab City spaces as well. So have yourself a fantastic day, and thank you for stopping by today.
Of course, we'll make you proud.
Absolutely, you should. Hey, and that is our episode. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Remember to comment, like, subscribe, and let us know your thoughts on whatever it is on your mind. This is the BTC podcast, and from myself, Katie, signing out. Mwah. Thank you.